Trail of the Bereaved and a Missed Opportunity for Answers and Reform. The group said it's a cynical attempt to evade scrutiny and silence the voices of the bereaved, adding the proposals fail to meet the basic standards of a credible inquiry. Joining us this morning is Majella Beattie, his spokesperson with Care Champions. Majella, good morning. Thank you for joining us this morning. Can I ask you, did you have an opportunity at any point to put forward your views to government prior to the announcement of this evaluation?
Good morning, Alan. Nothing of any meaningful merit, really. There was one day where groups around the country were invited after a number of months back, the initial talk about the draft terms of reference, where people were invited up to government buildings. It was a very short meeting, but everybody's allowed to ask one question. We're only allowed to have one person there. And basically we were told it is what it is, and nobody's opinions, nobody's suggestions were taken on board.
Now, you say it's a cynical attempt to evade scrutiny, but nonetheless, there are going to be individuals who will become before this evaluation voluntarily to give their views, we would hope in a wholesome way. It's better than having no inquiry or having what we saw in the UK where it became combative, it was a witch hunt, and not a whole lot came out of it.
We had an opportunity here, we believe, to actually make real change. We believe that the issues and the tragedies that occurred in the care sector during the pandemic really shone a light on what was already a broken system. I think as a group of families, we've supported nearly 10,000 families over the course of the pandemic. We have consistently reached out to government with the solutions because we have lived the failures of policies and decisions. So to be realistic, I suppose, we have a group of people, decision makers, who during the pandemic were making decisions, and their decisions were imposed upon people who had no choice, whose voice was taken away from them, who even were banned at times from the right to look out a window at their loved ones. Our loved ones had no choice. They had no opportunity to be able to say what they did or didn't want. So those decision makers are now allowed to voluntarily decide, no, I don't want to participate. I don't think there would ever be a need for an inquiry in Ireland to be combative or to be challenging or I don't think anybody is out in the witch hunt. What we want is to bring forward our experiences. We want a proper assessment and investigation of the decisions, of the policies that was in place that failed our loved ones. And during that time, I know in your own area with Dalgan House in the early days of the pandemic, we were telling government what was going wrong. We were telling government of the impact on our loved ones, and they never stopped nor did they reflect. And as a result of that, our loved ones continue to be failed wave after wave.
Okay, but do you accept though, Majella, given the sheer pace at which this was evolving at the time, and a lot of us weren't really that tuned into what we should or shouldn't be doing, but we were making decisions on the basis of the information that became available to us at the time, and to hold individuals responsible for making what they believe to have been the right decisions at the time may not be the best way to go.
I totally respect that. We were in a pandemic. It was a once in a lifetime event, and absolutely we acknowledge that mistakes would be made. However, this went on for years. When did we stop and say, look at the human rights of the people within? Like, people were left in their rooms for weeks and months on end, often leading up to their deaths. While in Northern Ireland and around Europe, they brought in Care Partner, they brought in safe systems to allow residents to have access to their loved ones, to respect their human rights in a safe way. We did not do that. we are not looking to hold anybody or finger point at a specific individual and say, you made this decision that ultimately killed my loved one. We're not doing that.
But that's what an inquiry will ultimately bring out, is accountability and responsibility to be borne by the individuals who made the decisions that impacted on the lives of us all during that particular period. What else would an inquiry do?
And an inquiry, normally, like the inquiry in the UK, doesn't, ultimately nobody can be prosecuted out of it. There isn't a level of blame. But we believe what we need here is to look at the systemic issues within the care system. And we do need to look and see, where did we go wrong? I believe our families, who are devastated by the disregard of the government towards them, our families want to know why decisions were made, how decisions were made. They want an acknowledgement of the failures. I'm sure there's loads of things that we did very well, but our families are people who happen to have a poor experience, and they deserve acknowledgement as well as the experiences of those who are bereaved. And in order to hopefully reform the system so we can have a system that is fit for purpose, that we would all like to receive care in, we need to actually go back and see where did we go wrong. We know that there was times that nursing homes were short-staffed. We know that in the early stages of the pandemic that nursing homes were forgotten about. And the result of that was that the individuals, the people receiving the care, were neglected in cases.
Okay, and
many of them died very lonely deaths. And that has to be acknowledged. And we have to be able to see these systems are wrong. What we want, in memory of our loved ones, is a completely reformed care system where people's rights are upheld and heard. And, we ask for two things of the government regarding this inquiry. We ask for a human rights-led inquiry that would not be we did not want it to be led by somebody who would see it through a medical lens. And now we have a nurse, somebody through a medical lens, and I'm not in any way disregarding her abilities.
But we do need somebody who has an understanding of the environment of